For those of you who don't know me, my name is Tim Pearson. I'm one of the referees on the executive board for the U.S. Wrestling Officials Association. On behalf of Mr. Rick Tucci, the president of USWA, and Coach Mike Clayton, the manager of the coaches education program, welcome to the first referee coach education program. The goal of the RCEP is to not only educate, but also build relationships between coaches and referees. And being able to discuss and learn together without the pressure of competition will allow us to objectively look at things, look at topics, and unemotionally discuss them where we don't have, we're not next to the mat or right after a mat. So we want to talk about the current rule set, how we as referees are looking at how we're going to call things, and to give coaches tactical insights that you guys can use in the corners during competition to help better coach your athletes, if you will, understand what we're doing to help you guide your athlete to not only score points, but hopefully win the bout. Without further ado, the first instructor tonight is Mr. Todd Blank from California, and I'm going to turn it over to Todd. Todd, the floor is yours. First off, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Tim Pearson. I'm one of the referees on the executive board for the U.S.
Thank you, Tim. Let me go ahead and share my screen with everybody. We're going to get right into referee coaches education program, RCEP. And we got module 1 for you. We're going to start with freestyle Greco-Roman differences. We are going to go freestyle Greco-Roman folk style differences, and then terms and vocabulary. So as you know, in freestyle Greco-Roman, there are a few differences. We'll start with those first. Freestyle and Greco-Roman, you know, in freestyle, we can attack the entire body. We can use what we need to do to make that attack happen without stepping on the toe, pretty much. Greco-Roman, we cannot attack below the waist, as you know. Can't use knees, trips, grab legs, anything of that nature. Legs, we know we can use our legs to stand up and get strategic and move around, but we cannot use our legs to gain any type of advantage. In freestyle, we could trip, we could hook, we could do whatever we need to do. In folk style, you cannot use those legs to gain that advantage, to defend, to block, to trip. We know legs are going to go somewhere. Legs have to go somewhere. Feet have to go somewhere. And again, a lot of times it can be very strategic in where the foot placement is, the movement. However, as referees and coaches, referees, we definitely want to be taking a step back, looking at the hips and looking and see what's happening below the waist. Was it an intentional block? Was it an intentional trip? What exactly happened? Was it used to gain an advantage? If it's gained an advantage, then most likely that's a foul. So we need to look at the context of that and see what exactly the offensive wrestler is doing or the defensive wrestler, what's happening for that to be a foul. Or again, was a foot planted, was a knee posted, and was that used in conjunction of that takedown, in an effective way or in an illegal manner? And if it's illegal, we're simply gonna, offensively with white paddle it, bring it up. If it was a defensive foul, well, obviously we're gonna use our solid red or blue paddle and then award it appropriately. We wanna make sure that everybody understands how important legs are in the bumping aspect, the hooking aspect, and that's what we're looking at. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Freestyle, accompany the opponent to the mat. Freestyle, you don't have to accompany them. Go in, grab a lock, throw it. You're good to go. Now, as you all know, Greco-Roman, which I think was just a great rule change last year, you don't have to accompany them to the mat, your opponent to the mat anymore either, which is I think very, very good. Cautions in freestyle, and again, we'll talk about this a little bit more, but all cautions being 1 point. So we have brutality, fingers, things of that nature. We give them attention, we set up our fouls, and it becomes something that becomes a caution. That's going to be 1 point. Flee in the hold, freestyle, 1 point. Greco-Roman, again, looking at, are we grabbing the fingers? We, pushing the face, brutality, things like that. Caution in 2. So understanding the caution in 1 in freestyle versus the caution in 2. Now, when we have an exception in freestyle, they're on their back, they're bridging, they bridge out of bounds, caution 2 points. We're going to restart in parterre. If a foul occurs in that position, we're going to restart them in that position, most likely, and especially in this case. Fouls in danger are caution in 2. Same thing in Greco-Roman. You got a foul in danger, it's a caution in 2. Most cautions, as I said, 2 points in Greco-Roman, but we know an offensive leg foul. First one, we give them attention, let them know they're using the offensive leg. Don't do it again. If they do it again, we're going to give them a caution and 1 point. So there's one of those times where it's not going to be a 2 point foul. It'll be a caution and 1. And then the second offense, again, would be a caution and 2. And if they did it again, or they did any other subsequent caution or foul penalty that relate in a caution, we have our caution pegs and be 3 strikes and you're out. Let me just move this. Sorry, guys. There we go. Folk style, the difference again, freestyle, Greco, folk style. We're going to talk about risk. So we talk about risk a lot in freestyle and Greco-Roman. We're going to reward the offensive wrestler. Folk style, you think a lot of times, we penalize them a lot. We penalize in folk style, we reward in freestyle. So we take a risk in freestyle and it just doesn't work out. Bring it back up. We get a fresh start usually, especially on a slip or something of that nature. Folk style, you try something, you fall, you don't hit it, they fall on top of you, they get control, they get the takedown. Takedown behind the hips control. And again, Dwayne will talk about Merkle, quad pod, things like that. Here we have 3 points of contact. As you know, folk style, I'm on my feet, I go down, put pressure on my hands. You're behind the hips, that's a 2 point takedown in folk style. In freestyle or not, we have to control it, bump them forward, either touch a knee, touch an elbow, or touch a head. We want that 3 points of contact, and we have a good control there. Really important in freestyle that we can do in folk style, cannot do in freestyle, and that's cutting your opponent. Right? You take them down, you want to run up the score, you don't want to turn them, whatever. Cut your opponent for the escape. Freestyle, we don't do that. Usually. An athlete starts to do that, we're going to stop them, we're going to give them attention, and we're going to let them know that we don't cut. They need to wrestle. Our commands are usually continue, action. They look up at you, you see that they're not doing any work, we'll probably bring that up and get them back in a standing position. it could be considered fleeing. So you give that a warning to the wrestler in freestyle, and they cut him again. We could give him for fleeing. We want to give him a good, solid attention. I'm not going to read everything here. I mean, real simple turns in danger. In folk style, you got to go 45 degrees. They got to hold them. The referee gets down in position, starts swiping, usually 4 inches from the mat. And that's how the near fall goes. And in a turn in danger, we have established our initial position, takedown. They come in, they get them to the 90, break the 90 degrees. We've got a 2-point action. They want to get them back to initial position. We don't use the term defensive position anymore. Get them back to their initial position. And at that point, they could turn them, full evolution, could tilt them again. We don't want to see them just, cheap tilts, cheap. They got to really earn it. Get back. Let's see that bottom athlete have an opportunity to move and work. And then that offensive athlete, again, get the exposure and turn them with a solid move. No cheap moves. We want them to earn it. And then, as you know, out of bounds, whole foot, or in a lot of cases, when we're on the bottom, maybe it's a headlock or an action out of bounds, and they land out of bounds and that head's out. We're looking for the pin. We're looking for the fall. We need to make sure that we could see that whole head is out of bounds. We want to stop that action and bring them back up. So we really want to pay attention to the head placement, and where they're at. They're defending, we probably give them a little bit longer if the head is up until they get down to the chest line. And at that point, out of bounds, we'll bring them up. As you know, in folk style, you get down, you count near fall, the pin points are in, other points are established or in, and even the pinning points are out. We can go ahead and get the near fall and call the fall. Here in freestyle, we're looking for those pinning points to be in bounds, because if they're out of bounds, we're not going to call the fall with a head out or the pinning points out. Technical fall in freestyle, 10 points. And if it's continuous action, then that defensive wrestler has the opportunity to keep that match going or get the fall in some cases. As you know, in high school, 15-point technical fall, and there's no continuation. The bottom line is they get the 15-point tech, and they're out of near fall criteria. The match is over. Falls, 2 seconds in high school, 1 second college. Kids, 2 seconds. We want to see that good control compressed fall in freestyle. Want to make sure that nothing is given. They get them on their back, they get them down, they control both pinning points, shoulder blades to the mat, and they got a good compressed fall. We'll get our confirmation from our chairman, and the match will be over. We don't want to see any touch falls, rolling falls, things like that. They're down there fighting. They try to go the opposite way to get off their back. Be patient with them. Get down, get in good position, give them an opportunity for that defensive wrestler to get out, or that offensive wrestler to really control them and to get a good compressed fall. Very important that we do that. In freestyle, again, 3-person mechanics, we're going to get that confirmation. The referee's going to get the confirmation from the mat chairman. Very important, and they must get it. And then in high school, college, so on, the referee makes their own call. Defensive fall, this is a real important one. Freestyle, you don't have a defensive fall. Again, that goes with being able to reward the risk. Somebody's taking an action, they're exposing, their shoulder blades or something. The offensive wrestler is now defensive. He reaches back, he grabs a head. We're not going to award that. Folk style, they reach back, grab a head, spider, do something to earn that fall. Then the defensive fall can occur. In freestyle, there is no defensive fall. Passivity and stalling. So the difference is here, in passivity and stalling, you start to see some of these matches in folk style go long. And excuse me, I'm just trying to move this so I could see it. You see some of those matches go long. You see towards the end, they were out there getting after it. Now maybe they just start backing away and they're kind of done. Their hands are hanging, they don't care if they get pushed out or they go out of bounds. You could clearly see stalling in folk style. You're not seeing that aggressiveness. They're kind of shutting down. Passivity is a little bit different. We call passivity, earlier on in the match. Passivity really is not scoring, right? Points aren't getting put up on the board. We have to decide as officials in that first 1 minute or the first 2 minutes of junior and above, who's being more passive. We need to make sure that we give them the warning if it's a 3-minute match. We let them know that they're being passive, and how we do that is working with our team, working with our judge, working with our match chairman, talking to them, really setting up, giving them our verbal commands, and really setting up those passivity calls, and then asking and getting it confirmed by the match chairman, and then we're able to put somebody on the passivity, the activity clock. You know, it's important that we stimulate the action. It's important that we get some points on the board. A lot of times people don't understand why, you know, why are we blowing the whistle? Why are we giving them these warnings, the one hand and the two hand? We're trying to stimulate that action, because at 1 minute to go in the first period of any match, we are required to have somebody on the activity clock. If we have a 0-0 score, nobody's scored and nobody's been called for passive, we must, as a team, stop it, agree on who's being more passive. We're going to call that person for passivity. We're going to put them on the 30-second activity clock, and then we're going to get some scoring there. We want to have the 3 calls, obviously, in that first period, and then a carry over to the second period. So in this modules here, you'll get more of that. Nick will cover that in module 4, but I'm just covering a little bit here. Stalling, and again, in folk style, not wrestling aggressively, passivity and freestyle, not scoring points and not actively attempting to score. So we'll talk a little bit about the mat situation in freestyle. As you see on our mat layout here, we have no 10-foot circle. There's no 10-foot circle like you would see in a folk style mat. And in this UWW mat, it's pretty simple. We've got our blue mat, we've got our gold 3-foot zone or 1 meter zone. In the middle, we have number 1, we have a 1 meter circle, and that's where they would come in, shake hands, do our pre-match, post-match duties, bring them in, and we want to get them in that circle so they're close enough together and start the action. We'd like to see them stay in the blue section of that 7 meter diameter circle and have action happen, get something going, score some points, make it exciting for everybody, right? The spectators and all, and really see things happen in that 7 meters. But if they drift out into that 1 meter section, section number 3, that gold section, that's our zone. And that's where we want to give those verbal commands. We want to let them know what's going on, help them stimulate, get them back in and get that activity created, you know, whether it's zone red, zone blue, and we'll talk more about commands, but we want to keep them into the central wrestling area in that 7 meter diameter circle. A lot of times we use folk style mats, as everyone knows, and you'll see tape lines, maybe little 10-inch tape lines all the way around in that 1 meter, which again gives us a zone and where we're able to give them some verbal commands and keep them back into the center or wrestling in, so there's no stoppage, or letting them know that they're in danger of possibly, you know, going out of bounds, things like that. And then, as you know, the out of bounds, we call that our protection area, and that's where throws do happen a lot. Action can continue to happen out there as long as it starts inbounds. We're able to score that action out of bounds, and we're still giving the verbal commands, but a lot of action happens in that protection area. Starts in the passivity zone and then happens in the protection area. Sometimes we want to hold our whistle and let that scoring action continue. We want to score accordingly. And situations there where we have a step out and a pause by the defensive wrestler, then obviously we're going to stop that. You see in number 1, there are no lines. There's no, I usually think it's about 3 foot long, 2 lines, they're about a foot apart. You got a red line and a green line. We don't have any of that. We just want to get them into that 1 meter section. Start, stop. We usually, you know, obviously we got red on our left, we got right on our blue. We like to start our match that way. We like to start the second period that way. We like to end our match that way. everything in the middle, the starts, the stops, bringing them back. We just want to get them back into that 1 meter section and continue the match, blow the whistle and continue to go. I want to use some commands here and really continue to, this is very, very, very important. Folk style, usually you'll hear neutral, right? Standing position, freestyle Greco-Roman, we're standing. We're on our feet, we're standing. We're not neutral, we're standing. Parterre position, very important. We're down on the mat, our knees are on the mat, our hand usually is on a mat. We're going to call it grounded. Regardless if there's control or not, if the athletes are down, action is happening on the mat, it's taking them down to the mat and they are grounded, you'll know that. If it's an activity where they're a situation, they're on their feet, let's say in this case, maybe blue is heading out of bounds, we might give the command blue zone, blue shuts down, goes to their knees and then gets pushed out. That was intentional. They're trying to not wrestle, and we're going to most likely score that a 1 for the step out, and we could also give them for fleeing, caution 1 as well. And in that case, if you felt that they were grounded, you could even start them back in parterre in that situation, because they came to the ground to avoid wrestling. But were they grounded? Was it a scramble out? So you'll have to decide on that, if they were grounded and if the action took them out and we restart, no points awarded, or if there was a foul, they were evading wrestling and we need to penalize them and then restart accordingly. Initial position, again, I talked about this a little bit earlier. We take a takedown, your defensive wrestlers, down on the mat flat, their chest is facing the mat. In parterre position, they're down, and that's their initial starting position. And from there, they get exposed, they get turned. We want to bring them back to that initial position in parterre in order to score continuously. Danger position, talked a little bit about it, exposing less than 90 degrees, making sure that we break that 90-degree mark. And also in a danger position, if it was from feet to danger, they hit their shoulder, elbow, head, something like that, and they expose in that position, we've got a danger position. So it's very, very important, again, when these are happening, that we get in position, we move around, we change our levels. So as that throw is happening or that situation is happening, we can see, was there exposure? And then also being able to work with the team, referee throwing up their points, and then the judge throwing up his points, and then obviously the chairman agreeing with, if you got a call and a confirmation, the chairman's not going to touch their paddles. And but if they have 2 different calls, that could initiate a conference, or they could be the tiebreaker of that. You saw this, he saw that, I agree with you, and award the points. Risk we talked about a little bit. We want to, again, make sure that we have the offensive wrestler makes a solid attempt at something, not simulation, not just going through the motions, or going to get pushed out of bounds and try something and they go to their back, or they go out of bounds and still get the 1. You can slip out of bounds, and if you try something, the action took them there, they tried something, or they were digging in, and then they got to the edge and they tried it and they slipped and they went out of bounds. Both hands are out, top of their body's out. We have a slip throw, but we do have a 1-point action. And again, we're rewarding that risk by not maybe giving a higher value of points, but in this case, they still would get penalized because they're out of bounds. We want to make sure that we see that solid attempt, that there is no successful follow through by the attacking wrestler, by the offensive wrestler. He's trying something. A lot of times this happens when they're down. You can see they're losing and they're really trying headlocks or arm throws, and they're just slipping and going straight down, straight down. That is, they're taking the risk, and they'll be rewarded, and they'll get a fresh start coming up to standing. We don't want to reward a defensive wrestler for not doing anything. So if they catch him, obviously, and they're able to hold them up on the mat before going down the mat, we're going to award that defensive wrestler with the 2-point action. Then we've got the grand amplitude. And as you all know, really exciting. We got a picture down there. Any action or hold by the offensive wrestler from a a standing position that causes his or opponent to lose contact with the mat, makes him or her describe a broadly sweeping curve. So we want to see a good arcing motion, a good broad sweeping curve in the air, landing in danger, and we would get our grand amplitude. We'll go a little bit quicker here, but this is some important slides that I really want to make sure everybody understands. So as our younger officials, newer officials, we want to really make sure they understand that UWW vocabulary, that they have the confidence to use the UWW vocabulary. They have confidence to talk to those athletes. When they're doing it, they're pointing with the corresponding hand. So if I'm talking to blue, I'm putting my blue hand out, talking and making sure that not only, my team sees me, the referee team sees me, the coaches see the referee doing it, the fans, everybody, spectators see. They may not be able to hear what we're saying, action, contact, but they can see that we are talking with our hands. And in that case, you see that happening. You see that the referees talk to them when they're setting up their calls. And next thing you know, they put their arm out and ask for passivity. You know that they've been talking to that athlete and setting up their call. So we use action. We want to open them up, contact, action. We want to stimulate the action. If they're blocking, they're in there blocking, we're going to tell them open, take a hold. A lot of times in America, we stop them, we give them attention, we tell them, hey, stop blocking, open up. You're just blocking, and but be able to use this verbiage is everybody understands it, no problem. And sometimes we might, again, talk a little bit more to them and really so they understand it. For us, there's a stop due to confusion. Continue. They're in a situation, maybe you're going to call, we have to bring them up, continue, or action blue to give them a little warning and then bring them up. Center, we talked about a little bit, get them back in the middle if you can. They're going towards the edge. Center, or maybe you're just starting a match. Okay, red, check in, blue, check in, center. Zone, again, that zone area is very important. So we're going to warn them, red zone. We want them to listen to our commands and start working and make an active attempt to work in. And if they don't, they get pushed out. Maybe they gave up. Maybe that might be something that is a penalty above just a 1 point push out. Very important when we're in a parterre position that we let the athlete on the bottom know and that they're at the edge. Place blue, blue place, red action. This way they know exactly what's coming, what's going to happen. We start to see after we tell blue to place and he soldier crawls out, we've got our penalty. We've set that up. We've given a verbal command. Everybody else saw us do it. Most people heard us do it, and we're giving them those commands. Head up. Big time in Greco, right? We don't want to bury in that head. We don't want to use it as a weapon or blocking. We want to make sure that we tell them what we expect from them. No fingers. We see that all the time. We don't want to interlock the fingers. We don't want them grabbing the fingers, twisting the fingers. Get it out of there. What I liked is last year we were able to warn both athletes at the same time. Attention red, no fingers, attention blue. Next one, somebody can get that point, that caution and that point. So I like that. Again, we just need to tell them what we expect of them. No block, make sure they know, Greco-Roman, open them up, stop blocking, no blocking, make sure that they understand. And all we're doing with these verbiage, we are stimulating action and giving them direction so that they understand, something potentially can happen. A foul can occur or a penalty or a call against them might be coming. Passivity, something like that. So we're trying to verbalize so they understand we're stimulating the action. We're trying to keep them out of trouble, trying to guide them and help them. And that's what we're doing by using the UWW verbiage. So, step outs, tire foot, real simple, except when you have the offensive wrestlers got a hold, they step out first, but they have an opportunity to continue that hold. Could they execute the throw, get the exposure? It's their points. In some cases, they continue it, nothing happens. There was a pause, stoppage. They could get a point against them, or if they've attempted something and there was no correct throw or no exposure, then they've attempted a throw out of bounds, and then we would not award any points. Fleeing the mat, fleeing the hold. Again, really important to talk to them, let them know. because we want to stimulate the action and we don't want them fleeing. We want everything to happen inside. The reversal, as you know, the counterattack 1-point move by a dominated wrestler in a parterre position, passes behind a wrestler who has given up exposure points. Simple, just a simple reversal is one. If you try a gut wrench, they're able to catch an arm, step over, lock them into that position, hold them, then we're going to give them 2, and we would give that as a exposure 2, not a reversal. Just a simple reversal is 2. They were able to step over, expose, and still get behind. They got the exposure. They get the 2 for the exposure. Cautions for illegal act, hold, and brutality and freestyle. Failing to score points during the second activity period. We want to make sure that, again, we're talking to them. They understand what we expect of them. We're setting up these calls. What's going to happen if they don't? Red, you're being passive. That's your first warning. You're going to go on the activity clock, right? Red, activity clock, you've been passive. We'll talk to them and let them know, and then use the corresponding hand signals. But I just want to make sure that everybody understands when we're in the bottom parterre position, whether it's freestyle or Greco-Roman, we need to look at what's happening. Is that defensive wrestler open? Are they blocking? Are we talking to them? Are we opening them up? And are we giving the offensive wrestler the opportunity to work their holds? Very, very important that they have the opportunity to work those holds in parterre. First passivity in Greco-Roman, we have a score and they have choice. We're going to go through that a little bit more. Take down the 3 points of contact we talked about, the correct throw, the defensive wrestler must lose control. I'm going to go ahead and pass this on here because these are going to be in the upcoming modules, and I don't need to go and talk to each one. But I do want to just make sure I go through this a little bit and make sure everybody understands. Low amplitude throw in freestyle from the knees, no lift. We just have exposure, 2-point action. If we're able to pick the person up, lift them off the mat, freestyle or Greco, and in freestyle, we're able to throw them and they land in danger, 4 points. Greco-Roman, we're able to pick them up, expose their back, invert them parallel to the mat, and they don't land in danger, 4 points. And then grand amplitude, we're able to pick them up, get that nice high arching motion, landing in danger, and that could be nice grand amplitude, and that could be 5 points landing in danger. So we really want to make sure, again, that we reward those properly. Is it just a turn off the mat and they exposed them, or did they actually lift them and get that exposure, and where did they land? Did they land in danger? Again, Greco-Roman, they're lifted, they expose in the air, low amplitude or high or grand amplitude, they expose their back in the air, that's 4 points. High amplitude, landing in danger would be a 5-point action. Really want to make sure, again, that we reward those properly. Is it just a turn off the mat and they exposed them, or did they actually lift them and get that exposure, and where did they land? Did they land in danger? Again, Greco-Roman, they're lifted, they expose in the air, low amplitude or high or grand amplitude, they expose their back in the air, that's 4 points. High amplitude, landing in danger would be a 5-point action.
Todd, thanks. Real quick, one thing that came up during Todd's presentation, he talked about the initial position. One of the things that I've experienced in the last few months, there seems to be a folk style term that's starting to creep into our sports called defendable. When a wrestler is down in parterre and they are getting turned, I hear from coaches and I hear from other referees as well that the wrestler never got back to a defendable position. Well, that's where the initial position comes into play. When that chest goes back down, they're turned and the chest goes back down, they come back to the initial position and the scoring can keep going. I will offer you that if you have a wrestler in a trapped arm gut or a leg lace, they will never become defendable. But every time they get turned, they come back to that initial position, and hence there comes another 2, another 2, another 2. So as referees, when you are on the mat and you hear they never got back defendable, that is coming from a folk style terminology, not an international freestyle and Greco terminology. I hope that clarifies the difference between defendable and initial. Defendable is a folk style term. The initial position is in our sport, freestyle and Greco-Roman. Next up is Nahama.